The gleaming halls of the Galactic Academy of Sciences buzzed with excitement as the first human exchange students arrived. The aliens watched with wide eyes and nervous tentacles as these creatures from Earth, classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, strode confidently through the orientation center. "They move so decisively," whispered Kelnara, a crystalline luminary whose translucent body glittered with anxiety patterns. Her species evolved on a gas giant moon with 1/8 Earth gravity, where sudden movements could send you floating for kilometers. "I heard they sleep horizontally, completely unconscious, for a third of their day cycle," responded Zixtal, an insectoid friction whose compound eyes never closed, completely vulnerable to predators. Administrator Tiliri glided toward the front of the orientation chamber, her willowy Floridian form seeming to flow rather than walk. Like most of her species, her skin resembled morning frost, delicate, semi-transparent, and utterly unsuited for any environment harsher than the climate-controlled academy. "Distinguished exchange students," she began, her voice melodious and careful, "welcome to your mandatory safety orientation. Today, we will cover essential survival protocols including atmospheric toxin detection, radiation shielding activation, and proper procedures during gravity fluctuations." The alien students leaned forward attentively, all except the humans. As Tiliri activated the holographic safety demonstration, Maya Chen, a stocky human with a perpetual half-smile, politely raised her hand. The administrator paused, surprised. "Excuse me, Administrator," Maya said, her voice carrying easily across the chamber without technological amplification. Under Section 12B of the Exchange Protocol, Deathworld species may request exemption from standard safety briefings when the hazards presented fall below our homeworld baseline. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. Lyri's pale skin flushed with distress patterns. "But these are essential survival skills," she protested, voice rising an octave. "These protocols protect against conditions that would be instantly fatal to most sentient life." The 5 human students exchanged knowing glances. Daniel Rodriguez, the tallest among them, stepped forward. His dark skin bore several small scars, marks of survival that made several nearby Selene students recoil in horror. "With all due respect, Administrator," Daniel said calmly, "Earth's baseline atmospheric toxicity exceeds your emergency evacuation thresholds by approximately 300%. Our background radiation exposure is roughly equivalent to what you classify as a moderate shielding failure. And as for gravity fluctuations," he smiled, "humans evolved on a planet with constant 9.8 meters per second gravitational acceleration, with regular exposure to forces exceeding 3G through our transportation and recreational activities." Kaliri's mouth opened and closed several times, her translator seemingly unable to process this information. From the third row, Xandra watched with fascination. Unlike her fellow students, the 6-limbed Arthelian didn't feel fear, only overwhelming curiosity. Her species evolved as data collectors, their neural pathways optimized for observation and pattern recognition. "The exemption is technically within protocol," Taliri finally admitted, consulting her datapad with trembling fingers. "Though I must register my formal concern." "Noted," replied Maya with a polite nod. "We'll use this time to finalize our dormitory arrangements, if that's acceptable." As the humans filed out, Xandra activated her neural journal. A subtle blue glow emanated from her central eyes as she dictated. Day 1 observation. The Deathworlders appear strangely comfortable in a universe designed to kill them. Hypothesis. Either their confidence is cultural bravado or conditions we consider lethal are genuinely trivial to their physiology. Further study required. After the orientation concluded, Xandra lingered in the corridor, watching the humans navigate the Academy's environment. Where other species moved cautiously, the humans strode purposefully, their eyes constantly scanning, not with fear, but with what appeared to be instinctual assessment. When the environmental sensors chimed to indicate a minor pressure fluctuation, a routine occurrence that nonetheless sent most first-year students reaching for emergency breathers. The humans didn't react at all. "Didn't you hear the alert?" Sandra finally asked, approaching Maya Chen. The human looked genuinely confused for a moment. "Oh, that soft chime. What about it?" "It indicates a pressure shift of 0.02 atmospheres," Sandra explained. "Most species find such changes disorienting or painful." Maya laughed, a sound that caused several passing melodians to vibrate in sympathetic resonance. "On Earth, we experience greater pressure changes just by riding elevators in tall buildings or driving up mountains. Some humans do it for fun. We call it hiking." Sandra's neural journal pulsed as it recorded this information. Fascinating. And the safety exemption, is it common for humans to skip such briefings? Maya's expression grew thoughtful. "It's not about skipping something important. It's just," she paused, searching for words. "Imagine if someone insisted on teaching you how to protect yourself from a gentle breeze." That evening, as twilight lighting activated across the academy, Sandra found herself unable to enter rest cycle. Her neural pathways buzzed with questions. These humans, soft-skinned, without obvious defensive capabilities, somehow evolved on a world so dangerous it was classified above even the predator homeworlds. She made a decision. Understanding these Deathworlders would be her personal research project. Little did she know that this curiosity would eventually save hundreds of lives and transform the Academy forever. Sandra's observation log grew increasingly baffling as she shadowed the human students through their daily routines. Her 6 limbs allowed her to operate recording equipment while taking notes simultaneously, a distinct advantage for her self-appointed research project. The Academy's central cafeteria buzzed with lunchtime activity as species from across the galaxy navigated the complex dietary stations. Each section was carefully segregated by temperature, chemical composition, and nutritional profile. Raj Patel, a human with rich brown skin and quick movements, approached the thermal beverage dispenser. The station was marked with clear warning glyphs indicating temperatures between 80–95 degrees Celsius, the preferred range for several volcanic-evolved species. "Excuse me," chirped a concerned cafeteria attendant, their gelatinous form quivering with distress. "Human student, you've accessed the high-temperature dispensary. The safe consumption station for oxygen breathers is 3 sections counterclockwise." Raj smiled politely. "Thank you, but this is perfect. Just getting some coffee." The attendant's translucent body darkened with alarm patterns, but the liquid temperature exceeds your species' safety threshold by approximately 60 degrees. Raj casually filled his cup with the steaming dark liquid. "It's actually just about perfect. I like it hot." Nearby, 3 Glacian students in cooling suits observed with horror. Their homeworld never exceeded 5 degrees Celsius, and they required thermal regulation even in the Academy's standard 22 degrees Celsius environment. "Is he attempting self-termination?" one whispered, the translation coming through as distressed clicks. Sandra recorded the incident, adding it to her growing database of human anomalies. The cafeteria station's sensor log confirmed the beverage temperature, 87 degrees Celsius. According to xenobiology records, such temperatures should cause immediate tissue damage to human oral cavities. Yet Raj simply sipped his barely hot coffee while reviewing notes on his data tablet. Later that day, Sandra followed the humans to their practical chemistry session. Professor Elixir, a 10-limbed synthuri whose ancestors evolved in methane seas, supervised from within a containment field. "Today we will be analyzing corrosive compounds," the professor announced, voice modulated through environment-specific translators. "Please ensure all 18 protective layers are properly sealed before approaching the substance chambers." The assembled students methodically donned their protective gear, all except the humans, who simply pulled on thin synthetic gloves and transparent eye coverings. "Excuse me," Professor Elixir's appendages waved in agitation. "Humans, your protective equipment is severely inadequate. These compounds can cause molecular degradation on contact." Maya Chen examined the chemical readout and shrugged. Professor, these acid concentrations are milder than what Earth middle schoolers use in science class. The gloves and goggles exceed safety requirements for these substances. Earth middle schoolers? The professor's translator struggled with the concept. You expose your juveniles to corrosives as education. Daniel Rodriguez nodded casually. My first chemistry set when I was 8 contained stronger acids. Earth's oceans contain higher concentrations of some of these compounds. We swim in them recreationally. The laboratory fell silent as students processed this information. A pellucid student with transparent skin showing its circulating neural fluid visibly recoiled, accidentally triggering its defense mechanism. A cloud of sweet-smelling sedative that made several nearby students drowsy. Xandra's neural journal pulsed rapidly, logging the chemical analysis from the environmental sensors. The compounds were indeed classified as level 3 corrosives, capable of dissolving protective membranes of most carbon-based life forms within seconds. The most startling incident occurred during afternoon recreation period. The Academy's biodome contained carefully calibrated environments for various species. The central atrium featured a sunlight garden where specialized filters simulated the home stars of various worlds at safe intensity levels. A warning tone sounded as Carmen Diaz, another human student, adjusted the controls on the solar simulator. Caution. Radiation levels exceeding recommended exposure thresholds, announced the automated system. 3 photosynthean students hurried away, their leaf-like appendages curling protectively. Even light-dependent species found unfiltered sunlight dangerous. Sorry, Carmen called to them. Just trying to get some vitamin D, feeling a bit pale. Xandra watched in fascination as the humans willingly entered the brighter section of the garden, their skin exposed to radiation levels that would damage most species. Even more baffling, they appeared to be enjoying it, turning their faces toward the light source with expressions of pleasure. Your epidermis is changing pigmentation, Xandra observed, noting the subtle darkening of Carmen's exposed skin. Is this a defense mechanism? We call it getting a tan, Carmen explained. It's protective, but also considered aesthetically pleasing in many human cultures. Before Xandra could inquire further, emergency sirens blared. Red warning lights pulsed as containment shields slammed down around various sections of the Academy. Attention all beings, came Administrator Tuliri's voice, pitched higher with stress. Environmental sensors have detected trace amounts of nitrogen dioxide at level 3 toxicity. Emergency protocols activated. Please utilize personal breathing apparatus until atmospheric scrubbers complete purification cycle. Students rushed to don breathing masks and emergency filters. The humans merely glanced at each other with expressions Xandra was learning to recognize as confusion. This is cleaner than Los Angeles air, remarked Devon Williams with a laugh. Or London on a good day. That evening, Xandra organized an impromptu research symposium in the communal study pod. Dozens of students from various species gathered, eager to share their human observations. They slept lying down, completely unconscious, for 8 hours, gasped a horrified vigilant, whose species took only momentary awareness breaks. Their brains simply shut off. How have they survived as a species? I observed one consuming capsaicin extract, contributed a gustatory student, a known neurotoxin. They called it mild salsa and complained it wasn't potent enough. As the testimonials continued, Xandra's hypothesis solidified. These weren't acts of recklessness or ignorance. The humans had evolved under conditions so consistently dangerous that what other species considered lethal hazards were, to them, merely background conditions of existence. The question that now consumed her research: what would actually frighten a Deathworlder? The Academy's annual field trip to the famed floating gardens of Centauri Prime had been marked on every student's calendar since orientation. Even Xandra temporarily shelved her human research project, excited to witness the legendary crystalline flowers that bloomed in midair, suspended in the planet's precisely calibrated low-gravity environment. "Remember," announced Professor Lemnall as the transport shuttle approached the orbital docking station, "Centauri Prime maintains a gravity coefficient of 0.26 standard. All non-adapted species must wear kinetic stabilizers at all times." The alien students dutifully activated their personal gravity compensators, all except the humans, who once again claimed exemption based on their homeworld physiology. "Your species evolved in nearly 4 times this gravity," Professor Lemnall noted with concern. "Rapid transitions can cause severe disorientation." Elena Vasquez merely smiled. "We'll adjust, Professor. Humans experience far more dramatic gravity shifts during space travel and even some of our entertainment activities." Entertainment. The professor's eye stalks wavered in confusion. "Roller coasters, bungee jumping, skydiving," explained Michael Okonkwo. "Recreational activities specifically designed to create gravitational extremes." The concept of voluntarily experiencing gravity fluctuation for pleasure silenced further discussion. Upon arrival, even the humans fell momentarily quiet at the breathtaking vista. The famous gardens stretched across a vast enclosed biosphere with impossibly delicate structures possible only in the gentle gravitational embrace of Centauri Prime. Crystal formations sprouted like frozen fountains, their molecular structures too fragile to exist in standard gravity. Flowers with petals thinner than microfilament unfurled in slow motion, their colors shifting with each subtle air current. Students dispersed throughout the garden domes, cataloging species and capturing images for their xenobotany assignments. Alexandra found herself observing the humans again, noting how they adapted to the low gravity with remarkable speed. Within 20 minutes, they moved with the same confidence they displayed at the academy, though with longer, more graceful strides. Elena had wandered toward the western observation deck when she suddenly stopped. Xandra's recording equipment caught the moment clearly. The human's body language shifted instantly from relaxed tourism to alert vigilance. "Everyone moved toward the exits," Elena said, her voice carrying a quiet authority that made several nearby students turn. "Is something wrong?" asked the floating aerolite student, its gas-filled body bobbing gently near the ceiling. Before Elena could respond, a subtle vibration rippled through the floor. Most students dismissed it, but the humans all froze simultaneously, exchanging glances loaded with meaning. "Now," Michael said firmly, already herding confused aliens toward the nearest emergency exit. "Move calmly but quickly." Administrator Tuliri, who had accompanied the expedition, drifted toward the humans with obvious irritation. "Students, please do not cause unnecessary alarm. These gardens have stood for 3 centuries without." A thunderous crack split the air, cutting off her words as effectively as a mute button. The familiar pressure of the artificial gravity field fluctuated wildly, first doubling, then disappearing entirely. Screams erupted as students of every species were thrown first to the floor, then toward the ceiling. "Gravity stabilizers are failing," shouted a garden technician, their tentacles desperately working emergency controls. "Central power coupling has ruptured." Chaos erupted as the gravity continued to oscillate unpredictably. Most species found themselves completely incapacitated, their evolutionary adaptations useless against forces their ancestors had never encountered. Aquatic students flopped helplessly during high-gravity surges. Avian species crashed painfully during sudden gravitational spikes. The humans, however, moved with astonishing coordination. Their bodies seemed to anticipate each gravitational shift, adjusting in mid-motion to compensate. They're rated for 0.1 to 2.5 G. Xandra heard Michael explaining to a technician as they worked to reach an emergency panel. But Earth's gravity varies naturally, and our inner ear evolved to handle rapid changes. A sickening metallic groan echoed through the dome as 3 crystalline support beams began to fracture under the strain of oscillating gravitational forces. A group of delicate arachnid students, their spindly bodies designed for precise web weaving in stable environments, found themselves trapped as the structure began to collapse. Without hesitation, the 5 humans positioned themselves beneath the failing section. As gravity surged to nearly 8 times standard, they braced their bodies against the crushing force, creating a living bridge to allow the arachnids to scuttle to safety. On Earth, this would be impossible, grunted Michael, his muscles visibly straining against forces that would shatter most species' skeletal structures. Here it's just really, really uncomfortable. Xandra's recording equipment captured physiological readings that would later astonish Academy scientists. Human bones withstanding compressive forces that exceeded their theoretical breaking points, muscles operating beyond maximum oxygen capacity, cardiovascular systems compensating for pressure differentials that should have caused immediate circulatory collapse. The rescue operation took 43 agonizing minutes, nearly 3 times longer than any known species could survive on a Class 12 world. Yet the humans endured, switching positions to distribute the strain, coaching each other through techniques they called pressure breathing and isometric bracing. When emergency response teams finally restored stable gravity and evacuated the gardens, the humans were the last to board the transport vessels. Their bodies showed obvious signs of strain, bruising, microfractures visible on medical scans, elevated stress hormones. Yet they recovered with incomprehensible speed. "You should be hospitalized," insisted the medical officer, a Medicorps specialist with advanced trauma training. "Your injuries exceed standard treat thresholds." Maya Chen rolled her shoulder experimentally, wincing slightly. "We'll be sore tomorrow, but nothing seriously damaged. Humans heal quickly." As the transport returned to the academy, Xandra noticed the shift in how other students regarded the humans. What had been curiosity, sometimes tinged with condescension toward these soft, seemingly defenseless bipeds, had transformed into something new, respect mingled with wary fascination. The arachnid students, their cultural norms typically prohibiting physical contact with other species, ceremonially touched foreheads to the humans' hands, the highest expression of gratitude in their society. "How did you know?" Xandra finally asked Elena as they disembarked. "You sensed the stabilizer failing before the alarms activated." Elena's expression grew thoughtful. "Earth shakes all the time. Earthquakes, tremors, vibrations from vehicles. When you grow up on a tectonically active death world, you develop a feel for when something big is about to go wrong." The Academy's medical wing overflowed with students seeking explanations after the Centauri Prime incident. What had begun as scientific curiosity about humans had transformed into something approaching reverence, or fear, depending on the species. Chief Xenobiologist Dr. Clax, a Vesperian with iridescent exoskeleton and compound eyes that processed visual information in 16 spectra, had reluctantly agreed to host a special symposium on human physiology. The lecture hall filled to capacity hours before the presentation. "I must emphasize," Dr. Clax began, mandibles clicking with professional caution, "that much of human biology remains poorly understood. Their homeworld's extreme conditions have produced adaptations that defy conventional evolutionary models." The holographic projector hummed to life, displaying a 3-dimensional human anatomical model. Gasps rippled through the audience as Dr. Clax highlighted systems that most species found incomprehensible. Their skeletal structure, she explained, zooming in on a cross-section of bone, contains living cells that continuously remodel in response to stress. Observe this X-ray of Elena Vasquez's radius and ulna. The display switched to medical scans showing healed fractures in Elena's forearm. These breaks occurred during childhood recreational activities, what humans call falling out of a tree. Note the complete cellular regeneration. Unlike most species requiring external ossification support, human bones self-repair after breaking. A crystalline student raised a faceted appendage, but bone is mineralized tissue. How can it regenerate? Precisely the paradox, Dr. Clax replied. Human healing capabilities extend beyond logical parameters. The presentation continued, revealing increasingly startling information. Cassandra's neural pathways buzzed with new data as she recorded everything for her research project. Perhaps most disturbing, Dr. Clax continued, changing the display to a microscopic view, is their microbiome. Human skin contains trillions of bacteria, yes, microorganisms, that form a protective ecosystem. They live symbiotically with potentially pathogenic organisms. They're colonized by microbes, asked a horrified sterilite student whose species had evolved in naturally antiseptic environments. Voluntarily, confirmed Dr. Clax. In fact, excessive sterilization harms human health. They require microbial exposure to develop functional immune systems. After the lecture, Xandra found Maya alone in the observatory dome, watching Centauri Prime's rings through the telescopic array. The human acknowledged her with a nod, seemingly unsurprised by the interruption. "I have questions," Xandra began, "about human adaptive systems." Maya smiled. "I figured you might. Your recording equipment has been following us since orientation day. You noticed." Xandra's central eyes pulsed with embarrassment patterns. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters and occasional prey," Maya explained. "We notice when we're being watched. It's instinctual." Xandra settled beside her, deactivating her recording equipment as a gesture of respect. Dr. Clack's presentation raised more questions than it answered. "Your species seems improbable." "How so?" "Your immune system remembers pathogens it encounters, creating specific defenses against future infections. Your muscles increase in size and strength when damaged. Your nervous system can rewire itself after injury." Xandra's appendages gestured with scientific frustration. "These capabilities violate fundamental principles of energy conservation." Maya considered this, watching the glittering rings rotating slowly in the viewport. "Earth throws everything at us: predators, diseases, natural disasters, extreme temperatures, radiation, toxins. We adapted or died. But the energy cost is enormous," Maya agreed. "That's why we require so much food, so much sleep. We're constantly repairing, rebuilding, remembering. A human brain consumes 20% of our total energy budget just maintaining baseline consciousness." Xandra processed this information, her neural pathways forming new connections. "The Academy categorizes Earth as a Class 12 death world based on environmental hazards. But perhaps the classification misses something fundamental. Which is, perhaps the true danger of Earth isn't any specific hazard, but rather its constant variability. You evolved in an environment where adaptation itself was the primary survival strategy." Maya nodded slowly. "That's surprisingly insightful." The conversation shifted to human reproduction, a topic that particularly baffled xenobiologists. Maya explained concepts incomprehensible to most galactic species: live birth, parental investment spanning decades, neural development continuing well into physical maturity. "Your young emerge completely helpless," Xandra noted with astonishment, "requiring years of protection before achieving self-sufficiency." "How inefficient!" exclaimed a Procyon student who had joined the increasingly popular human observation sessions. His species' offspring emerged fully developed, requiring only minimal postnatal instruction. Maya smiled. "Or maybe that's why we learn to care for others so fiercely. Human children are vulnerable for years, but during that time, they develop complex problem-solving abilities. Our extended childhood allows our brains to form trillions of neural connections before adulthood." From the back of the growing crowd, a tall, reptilian figure observed the humans with calculating intensity. Kvex, a draconian military exchange student, watched through narrowed golden eyes. His species, apex predators from a world nearly as harsh as Earth, had dominated the Academy's combat training and survival simulations for generations. Until now. That evening, while most students accessed their neural education feeds, formal challenge tablets arrived for each human student. The ornate Draconian script invited them to participate in the Academy's legendary survival games, a contest traditionally dominated by apex predator species. The tablets concluded with the traditional challenge: prove your worth or acknowledge your evolutionary inferiority. Administrator Tuliri, upon learning of the challenge, called an emergency meeting with the human contingent. Her delicate Floridian form trembled with distress as she cited 17 safety regulations prohibiting Deathworlder participation. The games involve environmental extremes explicitly designed to test physiological limits, she explained, projecting previous years' mortality statistics. Even with medical intervention protocols, participants regularly sustain permanent injuries. The humans reviewed the data calmly, occasionally exchanging glances laden with unspoken communication. Finally, Daniel spoke for the group. "We accept the challenge." Tuliri's translucent skin flushed with alarm patterns. "I cannot authorize." "With respect, Administrator," Maya interrupted gently, "we're invoking Statute 15C of the Galactic Charter, the right of any sentient species to demonstrate their capabilities through culturally appropriate challenges." In her research pod that night, Xandra reviewed everything she had learned about humans. One phrase from Maya kept repeating in her neural pathways: "We adapted or died." For the first time, Xandra wondered if the true lesson of Deathworlders wasn't about surviving danger, but about thriving because of it. The Great Assembly Hall fell silent as the 5 human students entered. Ancient protocols dictated that challenge acceptance ceremonies occur in full view of the Academy population, a tradition dating back to the founding days when species first encountered one another beyond their home systems. Administrator Tuliri stood on the central platform, her willowy form rigid with administrative discomfort. Beside her towered the Draconian delegation, 9-foot reptilian warriors with metallic scales that captured and reflected light in hypnotic patterns. Their evolved predator heritage was evident in every aspect of their physiology, from retractable claws to thermoreceptive vision organs. The challenge has been issued according to Section 12 of the Interspecies Competition Code, Tuliri announced, her melodious voice carrying through the perfect acoustics. The Draconian cohort has invited Earth representatives to participate in the 73rd Academy Survival Games. She paused, transparent fingers twitching over her datapad. "I must note for the record that I have filed 17 distinct safety regulation exemption requests, all of which have been overruled by the Gaming Council." Murmurs rippled through the assembled students. The Gaming Council rarely intervened in administrative safety decisions. Kvex, the Draconian team captain, stepped forward. Standing nearly twice the height of the tallest human, his golden eyes narrowed with predatory assessment. "We have studied your species," he announced, voice rumbling from specialized vocal chambers evolved for territorial warnings. "You claim Deathworld status based on planetary conditions, yet you lack natural weapons." He extended one arm, demonstrating retractable claws that gleamed like surgical instruments. No claws. His scales shifted, hardening visibly. No armor. A membrane slid across his eyes. No protective adaptations. Your skin tears easily. Your bones break under moderate pressure. Your muscles fatigue quickly. The Draconian tilted his head, tongue sampling the air. "You are soft, slow, and lack natural weapons. Withdraw now to preserve dignity." The hall held its collective breath. Interspecies challenges were serious matters, historically serving as proxies for evolutionary competition. No species had ever withdrawn after formal challenge. Doing so would establish a permanent hierarchical inferiority in Academy records. James Chen, the smallest of the human students, stepped forward. At 5'8", he barely reached Kvex's mid-torso. "We accept your challenge," he said simply. The Draconian scales rippled in what xenolinguists identified as amusement. "Then we will see what Deathworlders are truly made of." Team selection proceeded according to ancient protocols. 8 team captains, representing major evolutionary lineages, chose participants for their squads. As tradition dictated, species with historical competition received priority selection positions. The humans were chosen last, viewed not as assets but as diplomatic obligations. No captain wished to appear speciesist by refusing human participants, but none expected them to contribute meaningfully to team performance. Captain Zoltok, a Mantaloid whose species evolved as ambush predators, reluctantly selected Maya Chen with obvious resignation. The soft one with inadequate exoskeleton, he chittered, mandibles clicking with disapproval. Captain Viridian, representing photosynthetic species, selected Michael with similar reluctance. The carbon consumer requiring constant caloric intake, she announced, leaves rustling with concern. Sandra, now heading the Academy's hastily formed Human Studies research team, observed the selection ceremony with increasing fascination. Her specialized perception organs detected something the others missed. The humans displayed none of the physiological stress markers present in every other participant. No elevated respiration, no stress hormone release, no defensive posturing. Instead, the humans watched the proceedings with focused intensity, occasionally exchanging glances loaded with unspoken communication. When allowed to review competition parameters, they asked questions about terrain and conditions that puzzled the administrators. Expected temperature range? Elena inquired. Between -20 and +50 standard units, replied the environmental coordinator. Atmospheric composition? Variable. Some zones simulate methane environments, others high oxygen conditions. Gravity parameters? Ranging from 0.3 to 2.7 standard. The humans nodded, absorbing information with unsettling calm. When they submitted requests to bring minimal survival gear, their list contained items that drew confused stares from equipment managers. Friction fire starters, stone knapping tools, plant identification guides, and sharp rocks tied to sticks. These are primitive implements, noted the requisition officer. Sometimes the oldest solutions work best, Raj explained with a smile that revealed omnivore dentition, another trait that made herbivore species deeply uncomfortable. The night before the games, most participants entered medical stasis to optimize physiological readiness. The humans, however, gathered in their assigned preparation chamber, not to rest but to engage in activities that bewildered observation drones. They performed ritualistic movements they called stretching, discussed strategy with the analytical precision of military commanders, and practiced constructing rudimentary tools from ambient materials. Are they religious ceremonies? Asked a puzzled cultural exchange officer monitoring the feeds. Xandra, whose research now extended to Earth historical archives, shook her head. They're preparing physically and mentally. Humans developed these techniques over thousands of generations of surviving environmental extremes. Kvex watched the same feed from the draconian preparation chamber, his expression unreadable to non-reptilian observers. His species had evolved as apex predators, their philosophy centered on evolutionary superiority through natural weaponry and physiological advantage. These soft-skinned creatures with their external tools and cooperative behaviors contradicted everything draconian evolution had proven successful. Yet something about them triggered ancient predator instincts, the caution one feels when encountering an unknown species that moves with too much confidence. They are hiding something, he told his team. No prey species behaves with such calm before a predator challenge. In her research chamber, Xandra reviewed her compiled data once more. The pieces were starting to align into a coherent theory, one that contradicted conventional xenobiological classification systems. Earth wasn't merely dangerous because of its environmental conditions. Its true evolutionary pressure came from something else entirely: the sheer diversity and constantly changing nature of its threats. Humans hadn't specialized to overcome specific dangers. They had generalized to adapt to anything. Computer, she dictated new research hypothesis. Deathworld classification systems incorrectly prioritize environmental hazard intensity over hazard variability. Species evolving under constantly changing threat conditions may develop adaptive capabilities exceeding specialized evolution. As dawn broke over the massive simulation dome, participants entered sealed preparation chambers. Cassandra joined the observation team, her research credentials granting special access to the control center. When the environmental parameters were finally revealed, Earth's Siberian wilderness in winter, alien teams reacted with horror while the humans exchanged knowing glances. "Home field advantage," whispered Raj to his teammates. The klaxon sounded, and the games began. The simulation dome's massive environmental generators hummed to life, transforming the neutral staging area into a winter landscape that stretched to distant horizons. Holographic displays in the observation center showed real-time feeds from multiple angles as temperature readings plummeted rapidly. "Environmental parameters locked," announced the chief technician. "Siberian Theta simulation active. Current temperature, -38 standard units." Administrator Tiliri wrapped her thermal regulation cloak tighter around her delicate form. "Those conditions are lethal to 63% of participant species without technological intervention. That's why each team receives standard survival packs," reminded the Gaming Council representative, a bulky Teridian whose species evolved on a high-gravity moon. "Emergency beacons are automatically triggered if vital signs approach critical thresholds." Sandra focused on the human participants scattered across different teams. Unlike their alien teammates, many already activating thermal suits and portable environment generators, the humans moved with purposeful efficiency, seemingly unconcerned by the biting cold. Camera drones captured James constructing a snow shelter in minutes, using techniques that required no tools beyond his hands and a fallen branch. Maya created fire using nothing but wood and friction, a process Sandra had previously believed impossible without technological assistance. Devon fashioned crude weapons from branches, creating what he called hunting spears to successfully track and capture local wildlife. "They're using no technology," murmured an astonished council member. "How are they maintaining core temperature?" "Endothermic metabolic regulation," Sandra explained, her research findings finally making practical sense. "Humans naturally generate heat through specialized tissue called brown fat and through muscular micromovements they call shivering." Most shocking to the observers was the humans' treatment of teammates. While draconian evolution dictated abandoning weaker members to preserve resources, a strategy Kvex's team implemented immediately. The humans actively protected their more vulnerable companions. "Get inside," Maya instructed her mantiloid captain, whose exoskeleton had begun to crack in the extreme cold. "Body heat works better in enclosed spaces." "Body heat," chittered the confused Captain Zoltok. "Humans are walking furnaces," Maya explained, piling snow against the rudimentary shelter's walls. "We constantly generate heat. In survival situations, we share it." Across the simulation, Michael demonstrated similar strategies, creating microenvironments where even cold-sensitive photosynthetic species could survive. He showed Captain Viridian how to create insulating layers from natural materials, patiently explaining concepts that seemed impossibly primitive yet undeniably effective. "Your species survived without technology." The captain's translated voice wavered with disbelief. "For about 200,000 years, Michael confirmed. We only developed advanced technology very recently in our evolutionary history. When night fell and temperatures plummeted further, infrared cameras revealed the most surprising behavior yet. The humans gathered their alien teammates close, their bodies radiating heat that the Academy's sensors confirmed was deliberately regulated. "Your internal temperature is dropping," warned a concerned Merlonian to Elena. "Your extremities show reduced circulation." She laughed through chattering teeth. "It's fine. Humans do this thing called shivering to generate heat. Our bodies prioritize core organs over limbs. We can lose fingers and still survive." The concept of sacrificing body parts to preserve life horrified most observers, yet the strategy proved effective. While other teams struggled against the environment, human-led groups established functioning camps, secured food sources, and even improved their positions overnight. The Draconians, watching from their own struggling camp, witnessed behavior incompatible with their understanding of evolutionary logic. Kivex's thermal vision clearly showed how the humans deliberately cooled their own bodies to warm weaker teammates, sacrifice that somehow created collective strength. They protect the weak, he observed to his second-in-command, yet they perform more efficiently than specialized survival species. It defies evolutionary logic, his subordinate replied. Protecting inferior specimens should reduce overall survival rates. Kivex's tongue flicked thoughtfully, unless their evolutionary pressure wasn't individual survival. In the observation center, Xandra's research team collected unprecedented physiological data. Human core temperatures intentionally oscillated within ranges that would trigger emergency medical interventions in most species. Their cardiovascular systems redirected blood flow with precision that mimicked technological regulation. Most remarkably, their neurological activity showed no signs of fear, even as they endured conditions that caused panic responses in apex predators. They've evolved comfort with discomfort, Xandra noted, adding to her growing theoretical framework. Their baseline existence includes regular exposure to conditions other species consider emergencies. By dawn of the second day, team rankings showed a startling pattern. Every team containing a human participant had not only survived but established sustainable positions. Teams without humans had suffered multiple evacuations and equipment failures. Administrator Tiliri reviewed the statistics with growing amazement. How are they doing this with primitive methods? The Draconians have military-grade survival equipment. The Gaming Council representative studied the efficiency metrics with professional interest. The humans are achieving 83% resource utilization with minimal technology. The closest competitor manages only 61% with full equipment deployment. It's because they're not fighting the environment, Xandra explained, her neural pathways pulsing with scientific excitement. Where other species try to reject or overcome the cold, humans have adapted to work within its constraints. They use snow as building material. They use temperature gradients to preserve food. They even use the cold itself as a weapon against bacteria. When the simulation introduced its first major challenge, on day 3, a raging river crossing, the differences in approach became even more pronounced. The Draconian team, relying on their natural strength, attempted to forge directly across the churning waters. Despite their impressive physiology, the current proved overwhelming. Without hesitation, Raj plunged into the freezing torrent, demonstrating swimming techniques evolved over millennia. His movements were not those of a species unfamiliar with water, but rather of one that had conquered countless rivers, lakes, and oceans through biomechanical efficiency rather than specialized adaptations. Diagonal approach. He called to his teammates, voice cutting through the roar of water. Use the current instead of fighting it. When a Merlonian student from a rival team was swept downstream, James dove after them without consultation or calculation. His body temperature plummeted dangerously as he fought hypothermia and exhaustion to pull the aquatic adapted but cold vulnerable alien to safety. Why help competitors? Demanded Kivex, genuinely confused by behavior that contradicted everything he understood about survival competitions. James, blue-lipped and shivering violently, responded through chattering teeth. Because on Earth, survival never meant surviving alone. The statement echoed through the observation chamber, causing even the most analytical scientists to fall momentarily silent. By day 3, the simulation intensified with programmed challenges designed to test the limits of even the most adapted species. The Academy Council monitored proceedings with growing fascination as conventional survival hierarchies collapsed before their eyes. We're witnessing evolutionary theory in real-time application, noted Council Chair Bing Vexthor, a sentient collective of symbiotic organisms. The implications extend beyond academic exercise. The final phase introduced the most dreaded challenge, a toxic forest crossing. Dense vegetation exuded compounds calibrated to target multiple biological systems simultaneously. Warning signals blared as environmental toxicity reached levels that would trigger immediate evacuation in standard Academy operations. Kvex's draconian team approached the forest with appropriate caution. Their species' enhanced olfactory systems detected the dangerous compounds immediately, causing involuntary defensive reactions, scale hardening, mucous membrane sealing, pupils contracting to pinpoints. Analyze dispersion patterns, Kvex ordered, deploying sensor drones to map concentration gradients. We'll navigate through minimum toxicity pathways. A logical, technology-assisted approach that had served apex predators for generations. 2 ridges away, Maya's team approached the same challenge with startling directness. Without specialized equipment, she knelt at the forest edge, studying plants with methodical attention. "What data are you gathering?" asked her mantiloid captain, mandibles twitching nervously as toxin warnings flashed across his vision implants. "I'm not gathering data," Maya explained. "I'm recognizing patterns." She pointed to subtle characteristics, leaf arrangements, bark textures, root structures, providing a rapid assessment that left her teammates baffled. These resemble nightshade family plants from Earth. Those show characteristics of alkaloid-producing fungi. The yellow ones exude something similar to our petroleum-based compounds. She stood, dusting soil from her hands. "I can identify what's likely to be toxic without technology because Earth's biomass evolved similar defensive compounds." Across different teams, the humans demonstrated the same uncanny ability, not superior senses, but rather pattern recognition that bordered on precognition. They identified dangers without specialized equipment, avoiding hazards they'd never encountered through experience with analogous Earth threats. The Academy Council watched in growing amazement as human physiological readouts displayed something unprecedented: pain tolerance far exceeding safety parameters, stress hormones converted to performance enhancement, and neural pathways showing deep instinctual responses to crisis situations. Their nervous systems process discomfort differently. Standra explained to the bewildered medical monitors. Pain for humans is informational, not necessarily inhibitory. But their endocrine readings, protested a Medicorps specialist, are perfectly normal for humans under stress, Xandra completed. Their bodies produce compounds that convert fear into heightened awareness and improve physical performance. The observation chamber's atmosphere grew increasingly tense as Kvex's team, the presumptive favorites with their evolutionary advantages and military-grade equipment, fell further behind human-led groups. The draconian captain's frustration manifested in increasingly aggressive decision-making, prioritizing direct approaches over careful navigation. "They're letting emotion override strategy," noted the Gaming Council representative with professional disappointment. A classic predator psychology error. When Kvex's second-in-command collapsed from toxin exposure after an ill-considered shortcut, emergency protocols activated immediately. Medical drones descended to extract the incapacitated draconian. Before they could complete retrieval, Elena appeared at the fallen warrior's side, having diverted her own team's path upon hearing distress signals. Mucous membrane absorption, she diagnosed swiftly, examining discolored scales around the draconian's nasal passages. From her pack, she produced a small container of dark paste. "What is that primitive substance?" demanded Kvex, defensive membranes flaring. "Activated charcoal mixed with clay," Elena explained, already applying the mixture around her competitor's breathing passages. "It's an ancient earth remedy for poisoning. The charcoal binds to toxins before they enter the bloodstream." The medical drones registered immediate improvement in vital signs, confirming the effectiveness of a technique that predated space travel by millennia. Kvex's vertical pupils dilated with genuine confusion. You assist rivals who would leave you to die in similar circumstances. Elena shrugged, continuing treatment. Humans figure out something important early in our evolution. Cooperation improves survival odds more than competition does, especially in hostile environments. As the games entered their final phase, the leaderboard displayed an outcome no gaming council had witnessed in 73 previous competitions. Every team containing a human participant ranked in the top percentiles, with performance metrics exceeding specialized survival species across all environmental categories. In the Observation Center, Administrator Tyranny reviewed the unprecedented data with the Academy's senior researchers. "I don't understand," she admitted, delicate fingers tracing performance graphs. "They lack natural defenses. Their physiological parameters are unremarkable. Their sensory capabilities are inferior to most participant species. By all objective measures, they should have been evacuated within hours." Sandra's research team presented their preliminary findings, a comprehensive reassessment of Deathworld classification principles that challenged centuries of xenobiological doctrine. "We've misunderstood the fundamental nature of evolutionary pressure," she explained. "Earth didn't produce humans through specialized adaptation to specific threats. It created generalists who could survive anything through behavioral flexibility and cooperative strategy." The final scores appear on the simulation monitors, confirming what observers had already recognized. The humans hadn't merely survived, they had thrived, gathering resources, establishing sustainable camps, creating primitive technologies from natural materials, and most significantly, preserving the lives of teammates who would have perished without assistance. When medical evaluation teams processed participants after extraction, they discovered something that defied conventional understanding. The humans, despite enduring conditions comparable to their homeworld's harshest environments, showed remarkably rapid recovery. Microfractures healed visibly on sequential scans. Toxin metabolites cleared from bloodstreams through specialized liver functions. Neurological stress markers resolved without intervention. They're designed to bend without breaking, Zandra noted, recording recovery metrics. Where other species evolved to resist specific stressors, humans adapted to recover from almost anything. As participants gathered in the post-simulation debriefing chamber, the atmosphere had transformed. Species that had viewed humans with condescension or curiosity now regarded them with newfound respect, and in some cases with quiet fear. These soft-skinned omnivores had demonstrated capabilities that transcended physical advantages through something more powerful, adaptability born from evolutionary pressure beyond imagining. Kivex approached James, the smallest human who had nonetheless outlasted warriors twice his size. The Draconian's posture displayed none of his previous arrogance. "Your species has no claws, no armor, no venom," he stated formally, presenting his ceremonial challenge blade, his culture's highest acknowledgement of worthy opponents. "Yet you survived a world that should have eliminated you. We have much to learn." James accepted the weapon with appropriate gravity, recognizing the profound shift it represented. Everyone does from everyone else. That's how we all survive. The Academy's grand amphitheater overflowed beyond capacity 3 weeks after the conclusion of the survival games. Students from all departments crowded the ancient tiered seating, with latecomers settling for standing room at the periphery. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as Administrator Tyranny approached the central podium. For once, the willowy Floridian moved with confidence, her delicate form illuminated by the chamber's ceremonial lighting. The traditional post-games assessment had transformed into something unprecedented, a fundamental reevaluation of the Academy's core educational philosophy. "Esteemed colleagues and students," she began, her melodious voice carrying naturally through the perfect acoustics. "Today marks a significant inflection point in our understanding of interspecies capability and evolutionary adaptation." The crowd quieted as holographic displays activated, showing comparative survival metrics from the games. The data patterns were unmistakable. human-led teams had outperformed specialized survival species across every environmental category despite minimal technological assistance. "We have misunderstood Deathworlders fundamentally," Tyranny continued. "They don't skip safety lessons because they're reckless or ignorant. They skip them because, compared to their evolutionary history, our dangers are merely inconveniences." Sandra, now formally recognized as the Academy's leading expert on human adaptability, presented the comprehensive research findings that had revolutionized xenobiological theory. Her 6 limbs moved with precise coordination as she manipulated the holographic displays showing Earth's remarkable environmental diversity. "Humans evolved alongside thousands of predator species," she explained. "Their planetary history includes over 200 civilization-threatening plagues, multiple ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, and regular extinction-level events." The audience watched in silence as simulations demonstrated the incredible variability of Earth environments, from searing deserts to frozen tundras, acid rain jungles to oxygen-depleted highlands, all existing simultaneously on a single planetary surface. Most significantly, Zandra continued, humans developed intelligence not despite their dangerous world, but because of it. Earth's constantly changing threats required behavioral flexibility that eventually manifested as technological innovation. A senior council member raised a tentacle. "Are you suggesting that Class 12 Deathworlds produce superior species?" "Not superior," Zandra corrected carefully. "Simply different. Species from stable environments evolve specialized adaptations optimized for specific conditions. Deathworlders evolved generalized adaptability suited for unpredictable challenges." The implications weren't lost on the assembled academics. Centuries of xenobiological doctrine had prioritized specialized evolution, viewing generalists as developmentally primitive. The humans had demonstrated that adaptability itself could be an advanced evolutionary strategy. In recognition of these findings, the Academy established a revolutionary Adaptive Survival Strategies Department with humans serving as primary instructors. The waiting list spanned 17 star systems, with even military academies requesting curriculum access. Michael Okonkwo, appointed as the department's first director, addressed practical applications during the inaugural lecture. "Survival isn't about having the right adaptation for every threat," he explained to the packed classroom. "It's about developing systems flexible enough to handle unknown threats." The human's impact extended beyond survival theory. Medical researchers incorporated human healing processes into regenerative treatments. Engineering departments studied human improvisation techniques. Even diplomatic curricula added modules on cooperative crisis management based on human evolutionary psychology. Kvex, the once arrogant draconian team captain, had undergone perhaps the most profound transformation. Where his species traditionally valued innate biological superiority, he now recognized the limitations of specialized evolution. In a formal ceremony that shocked traditional draconians, Kvex presented Maya with his ancestral combat harness, his culture's highest acknowledgement of respected teachers. "Your species has no claws, no armor, no venom," he stated, following ancient ritual phrasing. "Yet you survived a world that should have eliminated you. We have much to learn." Maya accepted the ceremonial armor with appropriate gravity. "The most important lesson is one humans learned through millions of years of struggle. Adaptability matters more than strength, and cooperation matters more than individual capability." The exchange symbolized a philosophical shift rippling through the Academy. Recognition that diversity of evolutionary approach created resilience impossible through specialization alone. As the human exchange students prepared for their return journey, they left behind more than research data or curriculum reforms. They transformed the galactic understanding of what creates true resilience in the face of existential threats. Administrator Tyranny, once so concerned about human safety, now found herself approving unprecedented cooperative research initiatives. Perhaps, she noted during the final assessment meeting, we needed the perspective of species who evolved expecting disaster rather than stability. The most tangible evidence of changed perspectives came in the form of the semester's most oversubscribed course, Introduction to Earth Survival Methodologies. Students from thousands of worlds competed for limited positions, eager to learn from beings who had mastered adaptability through evolutionary trial by fire. On the final day before departure, Xandra met Maya in the observatory dome, where their first meaningful conversation had occurred months earlier. The human was watching distant stars with the calm appreciation characteristic of her species. "I've been approved for the Earth Summer Exchange program," Xandra announced, her central eyes pulsing with anticipation patterns. Maya's eyebrows raised with genuine surprise. "That's unexpected. Most species find Earth's conditions extremely challenging." "Precisely why I requested the assignment," Xandra explained. "Your world represents the most comprehensive adaptive laboratory in known space. The opportunity to study environmental response strategies in their native context is unprecedented." Maya smiled, recognizing the scientific enthusiasm behind the statement. "I should warn you, Earth's safety protocols are nothing like the Academy's." "I'm counting on it," Xandra replied, activating her neural journal to record this significant decision. "I've developed a research hypothesis that true safety doesn't come from avoiding danger, but from learning to navigate it skillfully." As their conversation continued, the observatory's viewport displayed the slow rotation of distant galaxies, countless worlds harboring unimaginable environmental challenges and the species they had forged through evolutionary pressure. The final scene showed Xandra nervously boarding a shuttle, clutching newly developed adaptive equipment and medical boosters. Her destination, Earth Summer Exchange Program, where she would study the most dangerous and fascinating laboratory in known space, the planet that had forged humanity through fire, ice, fang, and claw. In her research journal, she recorded one final entry before departure. "Perhaps the greatest wisdom Deathworlders offer isn't how to avoid danger, but how to embrace challenge as the birthplace of resilience."